Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brian back with Y Brands Work here with my co-founder partner in crime, Will. How's it going, Will?
What's up? Pumped, excited to dive into one of our favorite brands, Liquid Death.
Yeah, this one's going to be big today. We've been talking about this for a long time. It's probably one of the most popular brands in the space right now. People love it, and for good reason because they're doing really, really interesting stuff. And that brand is Liquid Death. So yeah, a very popular drink brand. They are started as water, mountain spring water, have moved off into a bunch of other drinks as well. They have flavored sparkling waters. They have an iced tea now, right? They have and now they're even
Pouches,
launching powders. Yeah, exactly, like
powder.
hydration powders, kind of getting
Yeah,
there to compete with like Liquid IV and that kind of brand.
yeah.
As we're going to follow the normal format of the show, and first off, talk a little bit about the brand, why you should care about it. We'll jump into their products. We'll talk about the team behind the brand, and then we'll go into the marketing and things that they're doing and why we see that it's working. We'll wrap up with our highlights as to what we think the big reasons are that why this brand works. So, Will, can you start us off and get us into why should we care about Liquid Death? What is it that makes this brand so cool? What have you found that's really worth highlighting?
Well, I think you should start at the top, the valuation. Uh, as of the recording, um, in 2024, it's a bill over valued at over $1 billion. Um, and this was really last year. It was like 700 million, and I think the
Hmm.
year before that it was only 200 million.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they have totally like ramped up to $1 billion valuation in like only a couple of years.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it's huge. I think it's like 1.4 billion or something like that. I think
1.4.
they doubled their valuation from
Yeah,
last year, right?
right. Hmm.
Yeah. So that's massive. I mean, obviously, there's a ton that goes into that. And we'll discuss kind of the volume that's going on, where that's happening, what's going on. But I think another part of this as well is like they're just the best brand, period, maybe.
The best.
Like as
Yeah,
far as like brand goes right now, best storytellers, best like actual marketing and interest, just worth actually paying attention to brand in the space. Definitely the one worth following online in terms of TikTok or Instagram or whatever your social media of choice. Um, just because they're really really interesting. They do really really cool stuff, and they're cranking out content like no other, and they're kind of writing the playbook as they go. It's definitely it's been interesting to watch. So let's talk about the products first. What's why is this? It's just water, right? Just water in a can. So
yeah,
what's so special about it? Why should we care so much?
yeah. I mean, I think that there's so much to unpack from the product side. Um, I think that they overlap a couple different trends here. Um, I think a lot of people just think, oh, it's just edgy, punky packaging. But
Hmm.
there are two trends I think that stand out to me that they overlap in that I think a lot of people discount outside of just the edgy branding is the whole death to plastic motto. It's
Yep.
um, this whole stance against plastic, and this is just a trend we're seeing a lot. A lot of consumers want this. Where they're just try. Even myself, I hardly ever try to drink out of plastic, or I buy metal cans a lot, or I don't buy like plastic drinks a lot anymore. So
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
like they're in that squarely in that trend, um, and also another trend that they overlap in is the zero alcohol trend, where um, we're just seeing a lot less. There's a lot of research coming out about the detriments of alcohol. Like if you like listen to Andrew Huberman or Dr. Peter Attia and these people, they're always talking about it. And the problem is when you don't drink alcohol, there's kind of a stigma around drinking water at a party or something like that. But if you've got a liquid death can in your hand, you are cool.
Hmm.
And I think that those two trends are that's where I would start. I mean, there's other things we're going to talk about, but that's where I would start about the product.
Yeah, no, I think that's anecdotally, a story from my own personal experience is,
Mhm.
a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago or so when I was still living in New York. I went to some ecom event. It was like a launch for, I can't remember what, but it was at this, trendy gallery. And at the beginning of last year, I did a full 6 months of no drinking.
Mhm.
And so much of these events are based around, being at a bar. It's always happy hours. It's always drinking and that kind of thing. Um, but the water option was liquid death, and it really made it feel like I was drinking with everyone. It was kind of this like
Yeah,
placebo effect almost, even of just having this big, because it feels like a beer. It feels like a
yeah.
big can of beer, and so
It's a
it's
tall boy. If you've never seen it, it's in what's technically called a tall boy. It's like a larger
yeah,
16 ounce
exactly.
can, maybe. Yeah,
Right, exactly. So it's a big can, it looks cool, it has some weight in your hand. So yeah, they're definitely riding that trend of like the no alc, low alc kind of movement. Um, I think it's also just like you kind of touched on this, it's not cool to like drink water at a party or whatever.
yeah,
And I think, one of the stories we've talked about is, we'll dive more into their partnerships and things later on. But one place that they have found success is at festivals, right? One of their investors is even Live Nation, who puts on all of the festivals throughout, the country, a bunch of them throughout the country, some even in like the UK and stuff like that. And they they're serving liquid death water there for the bands are using and things like that, because back in the day a lot of these bands that the festival is sponsored by Monster or whatever,
yeah,
they are filling these Monster cans with water because they don't want to be like chugging Monster the entire set that they're up there or whatever. They want to just
yeah,
be drinking water. But it's not cool to sit up there with like a Dasani bottle or whatever. But now liquid death is something that you can actually sit and look
yeah.
cool while drinking your water.
I'm pretty sure that's how they came up with the idea. Um, the founder noticed that he was working in advertising, and he noticed that he was like doing advertising for like the Vans Warped Tour or something, and he noticed that
Hmm.
the Vans were pouring out the Monster Energy and putting in water, and he was like,
Yeah,
like that's interesting, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, that's. I mean, it's genius because it's just like
Yeah,
you have to have you really need to know like who's using your product and how do you make something that's like so unsexy cool. How do
yeah,
you like take something that's so mundane and make it cool.
yeah,
I mean, the other factor of it as well is like it's water in a can. You touched on the plastic part of it too, like death to plastic.
yeah,
But that's a pretty unique thing. um, but that's not necessarily why the product works either. The founder has been, he's said that even in the early days when they were kind of working with the people that kind of the business people that were advising them on starting liquid death, are saying, oh, like we should be talking about like the how aluminum is recyclable forever or whatever, and it's like, well, you can't own water in a can. I mean,
yeah,
I had a Dasani in a can over the weekend. Like it's now a thing that water is being sold in cans because everyone's trying to move away from the plastic. And so, the truth about it is like we can't really talk about the product without talking about the brand, because that kind of is the product, because the product is just water. The
yeah.
product is just, it's water in a can. And the only reason that it's anything special is because of this like personality they've put around it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've like bought the product. First of all, I'm like a hardcore power drinker of sparkling water.
Hmm.
Whether it's like, you know, Lacroix or Spindrift, or you're drinking a bubbly right now, or or I think right maybe.
Hmm.
And I've tried the Liquid Death sparkling water, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even like from a product standpoint, it's not that good. I mean, quality wise, it's not as good as some of these other ones. And the founder even admits this. He's
Really?
even
Yeah.
admitted, yeah, there's YouTube videos of him talking about um like when he was talking about Monster Energy, uh there's something about the quality doesn't matter. It's more about the marketing and stuff like this. So it's very interesting, like, to think about that it really is, to your point, all like the marketing is really what is driving a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's an idea
Hmm.
first, right?
Yeah,
It's an idea, it's a feeling first, and
yeah,
I think that's proven by when you start to look at how they kind of rolled this product out.
hmm,
Early days, they didn't just start dumping money into like canning water and trying to sell it or whatever.
yeah,
They did, what I call like the spreadsheet approach, where, a lot of SaaS products will do this, where it's like, don't build software for something you can do with a spreadsheet. Get your first 100 customers or whatever and fulfill on the functionality of your SaaS with a spreadsheet. And
right,
they did that with their brand. They mocked some stuff up. They like kind of made the brand, did some drawings, made a commercial, I think, for like $1,500, and like threw a Facebook page up and just like had this Facebook page before the product even existed. And they're getting like thousands of followers and all these comments of, the kind of divided, how we know it is now. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people are like, is this real? Distributors are reaching out, trying to get it into their convenience stores and stuff like that. Um, and the funniest part about this is that at the time when they threw this Facebook page, there's no product at all. Liquid Death had more Facebook followers on that page than Aquafina did.
yeah. That's fun. That's hilarious. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know they totally MVP'd it, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like they did the whole like ship or sell before you ship, or kind of like
Hmm.
test for demand. Um, I think another interesting thing about their launch was, um, the founder was quoted as saying like, "What's the stupidest thing we can do? Let's go
Yeah.
do it." It's like
Yeah.
liquid
Yeah.
death. It's like death in a can, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and obviously, there's a lot of skill and experience in launching that. But it really truly was, coming back to your point, like such like an MVP type, spreadsheet type launch. They didn't like go out and raise a bunch of ton of capital. They have now, but back then they
Hmm.
didn't. They didn't have like this super huge business plan. They didn't have a huge production run. They had no production run to start
Yeah.
out. It was
Yeah.
literally just a viral video to test demand.
Yeah. No, and it makes sense because that's really the best kind of direction to take something like this. You
Yeah,
have to, and I might have come from the same interview where he's probably said this a few different times, but just talking about that, dumb idea type thing. He's
yeah,
like, really, the only way that you can do anything innovative is if everybody, when you tell somebody the idea, they think it's dumb at first.
yeah,
Thinking about like Uber, right? It's like, or Airbnb were the examples that he used, and something I was listening to, where it's like, if you had told somebody 10 years ago, oh, I think that people should drive around, drive drunk people around in the back of their car when they're like not busy, they'd be like, well, you're an idiot. Like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But now it's
yeah,
Uber.
yeah,
And so it's, the same thing with this. It's like, oh, we need like punk metal water in a can that is like super irreverent and funny and like makes ridiculous commercials and albums of their hate mail, and and everyone would just think you're ridiculous, but now it's $1 billion brand. So it really does take kind of that innovation, the craziness in the space to make the innovation, because the a great point of that is like, if it's obvious, somebody else has already had the idea. Somebody's already working on the idea. Somebody's already kind of moving towards that. And Liquid Death really like ran with this whole, hey, we got to just do something really, really crazy and just see how it goes.
yeah. I think there has to be, you kind of have to be a contrarian a little bit. I don't know if that's the right way.
Hmm.
Coming back to your whole point around like, if it's like, you kind of have to be dumb to take risk, or I forget exactly what you said, but I mean like it's got to be, if it was, sometimes it's like it's the dumbest ideas that will get the traction,
No, it's
yeah,
100%. And I mean, like, it comes back to the roots. Like, we can maybe jump in and talk a little bit about Mike here in a second. Mike Cesario, the CEO, the founder. But like, he grew up in the 80s around skate and like punk culture, right? And like, punk culture is founded on anarchy, right? And not, anarchy isn't like overthrow the government. What really anarchy really stands for is just like questioning authority, right?
Right.
And that's really what liquid death stands for in a lot of ways. It's like questioning what can be done with a brand, questioning marketing, making fun of
Yeah.
marketing, making fun of like the incumbent like brands in the space of like cans and what can and can't be done. What is the playbook, and just like throwing it out the window and trying
Yeah.
something else and making these it's questioning, do you deserve to be at the top, is the whole point of anarchy. So it's a very, you have to be, like you said, you have to be like a contrarian, a punk. You have to be like an
Yeah.
anarchist to really kind of find something that is really outside of the box. And this is just such a crazily like specific, and like it's the embodiment of that feeling, which I think is just why so many people are attracted to it. Everyone, if you even have an inkling of you that's a little bit of that kind of contrarian kind of, want to be a little bit different, fight the
Yeah.
man kind of feeling, it speaks to you really quickly. And there's a lot of that in the world. That's what entrepreneurship is in a lot of ways. I think a lot of founders and things like that have that feeling where I want to change, I want to be something different, I want the world to be something different. And so it speaks to a lot of people on a lot of different levels.
Yeah. I think it's like the anti-brand.
Mhm.
It's like in trying to like just be anti everything brandy, they have now built one of the best brands in the world.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
it's so
wild.
true. And it's like weird, doing it by accident on purpose in a way,
Yeah.
by
Doing it by
doing
exactly.
by doing all the stuff that people would do or wouldn't do
Yeah.
in a crazy way.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about Mike. You want to give some background on him and talk a little bit about what he did, how he got to where he is with Liquid Death.
Yeah, so he comes from an advertising background. I mean, we kind of already talked about
Mhm.
it, like a little bit. Like
Mhm.
he was working in advertising,
Yeah.
and working on the. From what I could tell, I forget the name of the firm, but he was working like big advertising agencies, working on this Vans Warp Tour, and
Mhm.
probably had a lot of experience working with these sort of bigger brands, and again saw the fact that the bands were pouring out the Monster Energy and drinking water. um, and I think that like noticing that behavior shift, but also having that probably just deep experience of working in an advertising firm, getting exposed to these types of large consumer brands was probably pivotal in the success that Liquid Death has
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about this recently. I don't think it made it onto one of the episodes, but when we were discussing Skims, when we
had.
were discussing Jolie, and now Liquid Death, all of those founders have some sort of like consulting or agency background.
Yeah,
um, like Jens, who's the operational mastermind behind Skims. He was working in like a fashion agency before he started his brand, before that, the denim one that came before Skims.
hmm
And now we're seeing another person that kind of grew up in that ad agency time. And something that I thought was really interesting, he grew up with the punk culture, the skates, skating and all that kind of thing, looking up to Tony Hawk and like those kind of icons of the time. But he was also, which I think is where we're going to see kind of the cross pollination here, is like he was an avid like drawer. He loved to draw. He was
yeah,
constantly drawing. He's a good artist, and he was drawing like funny stuff. He was like very into like the Mad magazine kind of like cartoon stuff to make people laugh. That was really where he kind of found his niche, which we see that in Liquid Death. There's so much that's funny about Liquid
yeah,
Death, right? Everything is humor, everything is entertainment, and it's pretty cool to see how that's like, I feel like he probably has a lot of personal, like, I feel like this brand is me, as he has like built it out.
and that's the genius of the marketing here. I think it's the genius of him being a founder, but and he's even talked about this too. This is not like my original thinking. Like they link, you use the word irreverence. I think he uses that exact word. Like they
Hmm.
link their brand like to humor and irreverence.
Hmm.
And why that's important is because, and Leonard, he talks about it in interviews, is they can link that, they can just riff on popular culture, make like take the piss out on popular culture, or like just endlessly, you know,
Yeah.
and they can just basically keep their brand relevant like over and over and over again. It's kind of like why Mad TV or
Yeah.
SNL or South Park or Simpsons,
Right.
like these shows
Yeah.
have been on forever. And like they're
Yeah.
kind of following the same playbook a little bit, that comedy playbook with Liquid Death.
Yeah, that's so true. I think a really good example is actually one of their ads or commercials is that like what to do with all this extra plastic thing. And it's like, did you see this one? It's like a
I don't
reality
think I saw.
TV
I didn't
show.
know.
Yeah, so they're using like the reality TV show, like, and it's all these like botched plastic surgery things. It's like we
Yeah.
have so much extra plastic, like type thing. And so it's
Okay.
like a
Oh, I
spin-off
did
of
see
like
this one.
reality TV.
I saw
Yeah.
this one. Another one I saw was the Shake It Weight.
Yeah,
This
yeah, yeah. The
yeah,
shake weight. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, Exactly, and so there's a lot of really interesting, he worked in the agency stuff, really was able to kind of combine all these different interests of him. And one thing I also heard him say, and I don't know, did you see he had a brandy brand before this? Did you see that? He tried to start like a brandy label.
I did not see this. No.
Yeah, so right after his ad work, the first thing he did, the reason he like kind of jumped out of all of this at first is that he decided he wasn't getting to do enough like real work. He didn't
Yeah,
feel like the ad stuff was, people aren't willing to take risks when it comes to like agency work and that kind of thing.
yeah,
People aren't, or they're looking for like guaranteed ROI. They're not looking to do something in crazy. And another thing he brings up as well is like the brands themselves, if the product isn't cool and it's not steeped in this kind of like culture and creativity to begin with for the product, there's no way that you can like slap some marketing on it and it be successful. And so he kind of went on his own journey to start developing something that was cool. His first move was alcohol. He thought brandy was, it was a good product and it was just missing, it was a branding problem. um, and so he started a brandy brand that was okay. He said he learned a lot. That was like his first kind of, move into entrepreneurship, but ultimately was kind of like squeezed out by his partners that were kind of doing it as like a side gig. They didn't need the money, whereas he needed the money. So they were able to kind of force him out a bit. And that's really when he started focusing in fully on Liquid Death. And maybe that's where he might have gone back to do some ad work and things like that. And that might be where the Warp Tour stuff kind of came about. Um, but cool. So let's talk about early days around Liquid Death and how they, we talked about the Facebook page. So they started kind of building a following around this idea. They saw, okay, wait, this is actually something that could actually be a thing. People were really loving this. Let's actually figure out how to make this, right? Because like this is not, he started doing research as they're doing all this advertise, the marketing for it before they have the product, and he's finding out there aren't many people that can like do water in cans.
yeah.
um and so they ended up having to buy it from like a factory in like Austria or something like that.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah,
so it was, they like they shipped, I think the order that they had to put in was like over $100,000. It was like 150K
I think
worth of
yeah, I did
product.
remember this. Their whole supply, like once they had like proven the concept, it's like okay, now I got to actually go do production run on this, and it's just
Exactly.
harder than you might have thought.
Yeah, and they had to ship a ton of water from
Yeah,
Austria and figured out how to do it. Kind of got a number after they talked to the factory, and their initial round was just kind of like friends and family stuff. Getting asking their friends or past associates and things like that, and kind of did scrape together enough to do that first run. But once they got it after selling on their site, they were D2C and Amazon first
yeah,
initially, um, and they were able to just they sold 100K worth of product in that first month.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think that's a trend we're seeing, that they're like these brands are able to get traction fast. You
Hmm. Hmm.
know,
It almost starts to say like it's like if you can't get traction, like there's something, you know, there's a bit of a like DNA problem.
yeah,
You need to go back to the drawing board in terms of like do we really understand product market fit, or are we running off of founder assumptions? Because I see that a lot. That's unfortunately something, and we've gotten stuck in that in ourselves with like Flow Candy at points where we run with founder assumptions rather than like really what product market fit is.
Yeah.
And it's an easy trap to fall into. So not to fault anyone for that kind of thing, but really as you go in, you start to have to think about like, okay, am I pushing this product? Am I pushing this idea because it was my idea, or am I pushing this idea because it works? You
Yeah.
know. So yeah. So the
It works for them.
it works for them. They're
Yeah.
working, and yeah, yeah. And so um, next, how did you read about the bar? The bar penetration after this. How they used bars to kind of get their next steps for retail distribution.
A little bit. I did read that they were kind of coming back to that whole alcohol trend. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
like that was like an early, now it's like really easy to see them all over the place.
Right.
But you're really getting that was like a lot of early advocates came from that sort of space.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, um, people aren't buying bottled water at
Yeah,
a bar.
yeah,
It's just like it's not a thing, right? And so there is this kind of opening. We talked about with like Skims, where it's an existing market, but there is a gap in that market, right? Um, and this is one of those things that nobody's buying water from a bar, and there's no reason for them to be buying water bottles or whatever. But Liquid Death is like a talking piece. It's something that you can actually get some feed. People are going to want to know, like, oh, what is that? That's such a cool can. It looks like
yeah.
alcohol. Is that an
It looks like
IPA? No, it's
alcohol. Should I
water.
go
Yeah,
get that? Yeah, it's water. Yeah,
yeah. And so they honestly, once they saw that that was a thing, and these bars were going from selling 0 water bottles a week to multiple cases of Liquid Death a week, they were like, hey, this is a great, like, kind of guerrilla penetration strategy. How do we get into like every cool bar in LA was their first move. And then funnily enough, the second one was Philly. How do we get into every cool bar in Philly? Um, and this was the most interesting thing I found out about it was this actually allowed them to get in with beer distributors.
yeah.
So this was like a huge unlock for them because grocery stores, all the shelf space and everything in grocery stores and places like that, or convenience stores, all the drink shelf space is owned by Coke or Pepsi,
Yeah.
right? They
Mhm.
own every single, different brand, even though it feels like there's all these different choices, there's no choices, right?
It's hard to
And
penetrate. They couldn't penetrate there.
you can't penetrate there, but there's a law apparently for beer distribution and alcohol distribution that like Anheuser-Busch and I can't remember whatever the second biggest,
Miller,
beer distributor, probably
maybe.
Miller Coors, something like
Yeah.
that. They're only allowed to own like 20% of the distribution by
Nice.
law. So it's like an anti-monopoly type thing or whatever. So
Yeah.
80% of these like distributors are state mom and pop shops that are just doing, carrying a whole bunch of different beers, and they can carry whatever products they want, but they own most of the routes of like delivering it to this grocery store and this, depending on what the state laws and things like that, or this bar or whatever. And so they were able to use these like mom and shop beer distributors as their first way of like getting some kind of like retail penetration.
That's awesome. I mean, that's another example of just sort of bridging your brand to another category, kind of that's sort of
Mhm.
unrelated or like kind of related, but like they're not really an alcohol company. They're not really a beer company, but they were able to move into that distribution channel, and like they that was like literally probably one of their catalysts that they were able to, if they can find success in that, they can now parlay that into, now we're seeing them everywhere, literally on in
Yeah,
cap Target.
seriously. No, they've catapulted themselves forward, I think, with just like the amount of attention that they're getting and how, you know, just like it's become kind of a cultural phenomenon now. Um, so is there anything else you want to add in terms of like kind of the initial brand itself or about the team of why this is working? Anything we've missed?
I think that are we going to jump? Are we still going to jump into some of the marketing, or do we need to go?
Yeah, I was kind of leaving.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
we got a lot to talk about with the marketing. I feel like we might be able to do another whole half hour on that.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that the brand and the team, it's pretty good. The backstory there is good. I mean, we talked a lot about Mike. We talked a lot about the MVP, the
hmm
initial
hmm
traction they got in retail. Um, but they've been able to catapult that into a whole nother realm now.
yeah,
They've really now like an omni-channel, powerhouse. And we need to dive into why that's happening from a marketing perspective.
yeah. All right. Well, where do you want to start? You pick your favorite, I guess, marketing campaign of theirs, and let's dig in.
Favorite marketing. I don't know if I have like a favorite marketing campaign. Um, I think that the thing that I like the most about their marketing, I mean, we've already sort of touched on how there's this whole like I don't give a shit vibe, you know,
hmm
um, and we're from this like D2C sort of space, this e-commerce space first, and now we're talking more about other channels and stuff, but they use their D2C store, like their Shopify store, like they just don't give an F about what's going on.
hmm
Literally,
hmm
they're not even selling their product there necessarily, and they just do all these like crazy drops and stuff of all sorts of crazy products. But then when you dive into it, because we went through their entire funnel, I'm like, oh, actually, they really do know what they're doing. It's like they they put on this facade that they don't care, and they probably really don't. But there is like tactically, they're doing everything with this layer of I don't give an F across
hmm
all their entire funnel. At least that's what I found.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, there's a great example would be um, the blood contract, right? Or
Oh,
so sign away your soul
the
contract.
pre-purchase flow. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is the greatest pre-purchase flow I've ever seen. Um, it's sell your soul flow.
hmm
Um, did you go through it?
No, I haven't been through it.
So yeah, it's basically so it on their site. If you go to their site, um,
hmm
there is a button or a navigation item called "Sell Your Soul." All right,
Yeah.
you click on it, and you have two options. You can either pay them $100,000 to sell your soul, and this is like a real product. Literally, I tried to check out, and they got a discount code, and I applied it. I could get a discount code on it. Um, so this is like a real product that they sell, and I want to know like if someone's actually bought this. Please tell me like if there's any difference. So you can either buy that, or um, or you like most people don't, and then what you have to do instead is you sign a docu-sign. It's basically selling your soul to them like virtually,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
once you sell your soul you get access to some like merch and stuff, but it's like again it's like one of these things like they don't give a shit. It's like they're clearly making fun of like opting in, you know
hmm
but then when
hmm
you look at it from afar and you look at everything they do, like tactically it's super strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I mean, it's like another portion of this is it's price anchoring. It's like,
Too, yeah.
yeah, I'm getting this thing for free, that is $100,000, right? And so like even if people know it's like kind of a joke, it's still, you can't fight consumer psychology. You can't fight your what's in,
Yeah.
the wiring of your brain, because that's really what is going on there. It's just instinct of you kind of associating the value with that. So,
The anchoring, yeah, that's a good point because they're literally anchoring you being a subscriber, which for most brands is just free. It's like, okay, I'm a free
mhm.
email subscriber. They're literally anchoring it to $100,000.
Yeah, yeah,
Wild. I don't
it
know if
is.
they intentionally did that. I don't know if like they were literally like thinking that in their head.
Yeah.
Um, but if they did, like that's just it's genius.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, and it's just one on a list
Yeah.
of crazy marketing stuff. So like, I mean, we talked about the shake weight ad, which is hilarious because it just plays into the meme that shake weight already was of like, the water can bursting on your face. And then like we've got the horror movie. They filmed like a full 45-minute horror movie.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch
they
the whole.
have Yeah, and then they have 3 volumes of turning their bad customer reviews and bad feedback into metal albums. They have 3 volumes of 3 different albums of their bad reviews. They have music videos for some of those songs and things like that. The Tony Hawk Blood deck. There's a skateboard deck that the paint is actually infused with Tony Hawk's blood. Like
Yeah,
there's the Martha
Martha
Stewart.
Stewart. Martha Stewart. Yeah, the dismembered moments candle. That was wild.
Yes, the dismembered hand candle, the Travis Barker collectible enema, like
Yeah, I saw that.
the better. Did you see the Better Than Back Sweat ad? Like
Yeah,
where they did a blind taste test with a guy's back sweat versus the liquid death water. Steve-O got a water
Steven got that
tattoo
too. Yeah,
of them. And then there's a Fortnite map like for them now. There's this other thing was Rebel Moon, this like Netflix show. They
yeah.
have now they position themselves as like this oppressive overlord, like you know society of people. It's like the official drink of the oppressors. Like
Yeah,
after a day of like killing farmers for not paying their taxes, like we like to relax with a nice cold liquid death.
yeah,
um and just this is just what they do. It's insane,
yeah,
like the amount of content that they put out. But one I think we should dive into a little bit, which is so interesting, is the Super Bowl ad they did a couple months ago. Um,
yeah. You want to start? You want to kick it off?
yeah, yeah, okay. You saw this, right?
I did, but like, remind me.
Okay, so the way that they came up with this idea
Yeah,
is, Super Bowl ads are exorbitantly expensive, right? It's like
yeah,
6 mil for 30 seconds or something like
yeah.
that, right?
Hmm.
Average viewership of the Super Bowl they consider is like 100 million people. All right. Um, and so they were looking at some stats of stuff and they realized the average, like Walmart has 100 million people walk through its doors every single week.
Yeah.
So the number of people watching the Super Bowl go to Walmart per week. All right.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so their whole stance on this was buy an ad that's bigger than the Super Bowl. Because between they're in Walmart, they're in Target, they're in Whole Foods, between all of the retail distributors that they're in, they calculated that they actually get 200 million views per week on their boxes.
Yeah.
Okay. So they sold a side panel of their box as ad space for a run of 500,000 cases of Liquid Death for 200 million, views per week. As like they only put like 10K into making this thing and actually sold. They threw up like an eBay page or an
Oh yeah. Yeah.
eBay like bid, and brands were legitimately bidding and were reaching out to Liquid Death asking about the terms of the whole thing and whatever. And they ran an auction for paneling on 500 on a run of 500,000 cases of Liquid Death as their like anti Super Bowl ad. So instead of paying for a Super Bowl ad, they got paid for an ad on their box for this
So
one
they
run.
didn't run an ad. They didn't advertise that in the Super Bowl. They just said we're not going to do a Super Bowl ad. Instead, we're going to do this promotion, trying to get people to.
And they ran it as an ad bigger than a Super Bowl ad.
Got
Like
it.
get
Yeah.
more impressions than a Super Bowl
That's
ad.
that's genius. Yeah.
And it actually sold.
Yeah. I mean, I bet. Yeah.
Like it
It's great.
actually happened.
Yeah.
Coinbase bought it.
That's right. I remember it now. Yeah. I remember reading this, but like I don't like it. I didn't. It had been a while since because I remember reading about that at the time of the Super Bowl.
They paid $500,000 for it.
Wild. I mean, how much is a Super Bowl ad probably cost? You said it was a couple
It's
million dollars.
about 6 mil per 30 seconds, I think
Okay.
is the ballpark.
So they basically made $500,000.
Yeah.
And did it drive, like, do we know, like, if that actually drove more business to them?
Who cares?
Who cares?
I mean, I think that would be Liquid Death's answer in a way.
For sure. I mean, I know, like, for sure, Liquid Death. Like, when I did our funnel breakdown, someone was like, funnel, like, making fun of me for saying the word funnel because it's so anti black
Uh-huh.
Liquid Death. Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to like figure out from like the point of view of like a business point of view if it's like
Yeah.
actually something that is like helping
Yeah.
the brand like move forward.
I mean, at the end of the day, they made $490,000 of pure profit because he
Yeah,
said it only cost him 10K to like throw this little thing together and like run it, right?
yeah,
So they made money just off of like the advertising space.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, it this is what we talk about so much around these brands. Skims does it because they have Kim Kardashian and her phone. Her phone is the most important part of Skims, right? Because she has every famous person's phone number in there. That's they're one text away. Getting a text from Kim, she can get whoever she wants into the studio to take a picture in their underwear and use as content forever, right? This is the first, this is the one of the only brands that doesn't have access to celebrity and to these kind of huge influencer people, that is, even though they do now but didn't initially, and has it been able to leverage just on being entertaining. This is what you have to do nowadays. I mean, look at us, we run an agency, but we're sitting here talking on a podcast, right? Because we have to entertain, we have to inform, we have to give value to the world. For anybody to care what brand you work for, or the work you do, or things like that, because you get so much for nothing in the world today. You get so much like dopamine, so many dopamine hits, so much like little tidbits of this and that. You can scroll through Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or whatever all day long and just kind of like absorb all of this content for free. And brands that can't keep up and like make some sort of, make something that's worth watching, they're at a severe disadvantage to these brands that can. You have to have, otherwise you're just kind of selling a product and hoping that people find it. If you really want to have a brand for real, you have to have some sort of attraction. You have to have some reason to entertain and to bring people in to actually listen to what you're saying.
yeah. I think that that it kind of, to me, like, that's sort of the genius of their whole marketing strategy is just them coming back to this humor. Like if
Hmm.
you just go to their site, like all the videos we just talked about, there's this, it's called like Time Waster 5000 or something,
Yep.
and you can go
Yep.
on YouTube and look at all this stuff. And it's just, they're just, again, it's like the endless riffing on pop culture or whatever they want. They can do whatever they want, you know, because their brand is so anti-establishment. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, like, I think you brought up a good point around how, like, yeah, they have like some celebrity stuff, like with Travis Barker, Martha Stewart, Tony Hawk. It's not nearly as as like they don't have as much traction or volume as like a brand like Skims, but
Hmm.
they have a much stronger. I mean, I would say Skims has like a lot of raving fans, but I think these guys, like, they just have such a rabid fan base around like what they're doing, and they can just riff on this humor stuff. And I mean, we talked about the Steve-O stuff and the tattoos, but I mean, like, to me, that's another thing that really stands out for them is the fact that people are getting tattoos of their logo on their body.
Right. And not just Steve-O, but like
Yeah,
normal people.
hundreds of people.
Yeah. Isn't that's a KPI for them, right?
Yeah, like how many? I mean, they probably don't say that because they're like, screw KPIs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that is probably, again, they're like, they don't like to track KPIs. They're poking fun at KPIs, but they probably have, you know, there's probably, they have their own way of doing it,
Yeah.
and I think I saw in one, somebody told me on LinkedIn that he ran into a guy at the gym that had uh, like underneath his belly button, half of the can was Liquid Death, and then the other half was underneath his pants. And it's it's like that shit like that, you know. It's like that's the whole in this episode. I think we're just allowed to cuss, you know. But
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that where it's like um, that's the brand right there, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and like who like we talk about all these brands, like nobody like Coke, Aquafina, Pepsi, like no one's getting that a tattoo of that on their body.
Hmm.
And if they are,
Hmm.
it's like probably making fun of that brand,
Yeah. Yeah. I would. There are probably some people out there with like Diet Coke tattoos, to be fair, and Coke tattoos.
maybe.
Just because,
Maybe.
like, there are, there are diehard Coke people out there, and not that kind of Coke, but just normal Coca-Cola. Love the brand, right?
Yeah.
Um, but not anything to this level where it's like, and you can see it. Like, there's so much merch, there's so much different stuff that is just like out there, and they're using all the different channels to create a world. Like, that's something that I talk about a lot, with brands that I really like, is just like, how do you actually create a world that people can like kind of enter for a little while they're on your site, or how do you make them feel a certain way about using the product? And like, Liquid Death makes you feel cool, just the same way, that some other brand might make you feel fancy. Liquid Death makes you feel cool, and you don't have to, love metal or love death, or be really macabre um to like want to use their product, or buy their stuff, or wear their stuff even. um and so I think it's they've just really transcended that ability to like build a world and like actually bring you in. They've transcended just like being a brand, and now it's this whole space that people can actually like go into. So it's going to be very cool, and I look forward to seeing like all of the different types of partnerships that they do. We mentioned Live Nation before as like they're investors. All the celebrities that they partner with, they're not just like influencers; they are investors as well. Like Tony Hawk is an investor, Martha Stewart is an investor. Like they're part of the company
That's
now.
awesome.
Yeah, and so I think that that was something that they mentioned, is that they're really trying to only partner and only work with investors that really get it, that
Right.
want to be a part of something cool like this, and want to like
Right.
see it move in the direction that they have for the vision.
Right. Cool. So where do you want to go from here? Do you want to talk about why this brand works for you, or do you want to talk about where they're like how do they grow from here? What do you
Let's do
think?
our let's do our top three. I think we'll
Okay.
we'll we'll hit our top three and go from there. So yeah, I'll start today. Let's see. Um, I think first and foremost for me has got to be uh, the testing first. The MVP. I think that is, if I were building a brand myself, I think that's, if I'm listening to this episode and I'm thinking about starting a product, or I've just recently started a product or something like that, and I feel like I hadn't checked that box of really MVPing the idea, finding some sort of audience for it, um, that's exactly where I would start. If I were to start a new business today, it would start with the audience first. It would start with the content. It would start with who is this for? So I
Mhm.
think that that's something that they got really, really, really right. Because without that, you can't, you can't actually guarantee that you're going to get any kind of audience or anything like that. Um, Second, I think just really sticking to a culture that they personally identify with. I think finding the right people to do that. We didn't talk about this a lot, but something that was mentioned on one of the podcasts that I listened to is that they went out there and were very clear about finding people that were really, really good at the stuff that they wanted to. A lot of the people that work at Liquid Death aren't like legacy CPG beverage people, or ecom people or whatever. They're like comedians and
Yeah.
like show writers and stuff like that are like, they're professional funny people, because that's what they want the brand to be. And so I think that's really inspirational in terms of like defining a culture and sticking to it, and making that the really investing in that being the DNA of the brand. um and then lastly, I think the coolest thing that I learned, and it translates into this like guerrilla marketing kind of approach that I think all brands should be taking if they're really trying to get scrappy about it, is that whole beer distribution thing. Like, where can you go? How can you know, how can you get your first, 1,000 true fans, right? Always love that thing of like 1,000 true fans is really what you're shooting for, and that's going to open some doors for you. That's really what 1,000 true fans is about. It's not that, okay, 1,000 true fans can like sustain a business. It's actually that 1,000 true fans is going to give you the opportunities to like really expand and do something great. And I think that's what that like aha moment kind of was for them, of like, ooh, this beer distribution route is going to be how we get like real market penetration before we can really access retail in the way that we want to.
Yeah, super powerful stuff. I think that that was a new one I learned, that I did not know that heading in, that they had originally, their first brick and mortar exposure was through the the beverage or the beer distribution routes. I think big three for me, there's a lot. I think that probably the biggest one is just starting with Mike and the shift that he noticed around, like the bands using Monster Energy or pouring that out. You're pouring Monster Energy out and putting it in with water, and just sort of, I guess he was probably already in sort of an entrepreneurial mode because he had started that brandy company, and so maybe he was already
Mm-hmm.
looking for inspiration, but just sort of noticing that behavior shift. Like sometimes I think that's a great place to start thinking about like building a business or a
Mm-hmm.
brand, like where are, like just noticing people's behavior, so I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a great inspiration for him. I think another reason why the brand really works for me is just like the raving fan aspect. um how they just get a lot of, like, even like we've talked about the tattoos, but like have you gone and looked at the product reviews? It's just like
Yeah.
they literally have their customers talking like their brand on their customer reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk about it sometimes why it's important to create raving fans, because raving fans are the type of people that talk about your brand at a party or something
Right.
like that, and therefore it's like free marketing, and it's the best form of marketing, word of mouth
Right.
marketing. And I think that these guys, it's like, again, I'm not sure if it was intentional, but like the virality of the, and like the advocacy and the raving fan factor here is truly like off the charts. Um, and then for me, it's like just coming back, sort of like what you said, but like the fundamentals are really strong here. Even though
Yeah.
it's rumored that they're not profitable, I've heard this, or their profit rounds, their profit margins are quite low.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that like how they started this brand, like the fundamentals of doing that in terms of like just uh, like we talked about the video, launching that video, and just like not putting a huge budget around this, like a huge production run at first. And also just the fundamentals of like sort of backdropping your brand to like environmental trends,
Mm-hmm.
to like consumer alcoholic trends or beverage trends. That to me is like why it works.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so much, and this is the thing I think we're learning by doing these why brands work. It's like really what it comes down to. You got to be checking 9 out of 12 boxes or so for a brand
Yeah,
to really work. There's so many things you can pick out. It's hard to even like fit everything in into, we even ran over time on this one. We're like, this is the longest episode we've done so far. Try to keep them at 45 minutes, but there's just so much to talk about with Liquid Death, and all the brands are kind of like that too. But yeah, it's been a great episode. Again, this has been Why Brands Work. I'm here with Will, the other co-founder of Flow Candy. I'm Brian, the other co-founder of Flow Candy. And as always, we do a ton of research for these things. We listen to a bunch of different podcasts. We, go into our own like deep dive into their numbers, analytics. We go through their flows. We buy the product. We do all these different stuff just to make sure that we can provide you with as much insight, as much value as we can for all this stuff. And we'll package that all up for you. We have it in a folder that you can have access to. So all you got to do is go to flowcandy.com/liquid-death. and we will get that sent over to you. You can download all the stuff, and like I said, there's a ton of value in there if you want to kind of go through their flows, go through. We don't have emails on them yet, but we'll make sure we get some emails for you too. So we'll go through. You'll have a ton of resources that you can jump into and learn about. And again, keep talking about it, but why brands work, totally new thing that we're running for our own brand, to learn more, to get better as marketers, to keep going. And so if there's something you want to learn about, a brand you want us to deep dive into, please let us know. You can, I don't know where you're listening to this right now. It might be LinkedIn, might be YouTube, could be Spotify, I don't know, podcast, who knows, whatever's going on. Make sure you like it, make sure you follow, let us know what you think. Shoot us an email if you want to. We're happy to respond and find out what you think. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next time. So have a great day.
Yep. Later, everyone. See you on the next episode.